Hello and welcome to another episode of the BookBaby Spotlight Podcast, your home for conversations with authors, illustrators, editors, and other industry insiders from the world of self-publishing. I'm Sam Sedan, the distribution manager at BookBaby, joined by my co-host, Jasmine Gale.
Hey.
Today we have an interview with BookBaby author Dr. Candice Rowser to discuss her book, Engaged Citizen. But up first, we want to talk about the Newbery Medal, as it is their 100th anniversary. I remember having a few of these books with a big embossed seal growing up, like Giver, Bridge to Terabithia. It's a nice little stroll down memory lane reading this list, huh, Jazz? What's your favorite on there?
I feel like it actually got a Newbery honor, but Charlotte's Web is definitely something that's up there.
So, Jazz, in simplest terms, what is the Newbery Medal?
Yeah, so the Newbery Medal is like a literary award given to an author that has the most distinguished contributions to American literature for children. The medal is designated to like one book every year. Other books can receive like an honorary award. The concept was created by famous American publisher Frederick G. Melker. The design itself was made by American architectural sculptor named Rene Paul Chamberlain in 1922. And has remained the symbol ever since.
Who gets to decide? Who gets the award?
Yeah, so it's the Association Library Service for Children is the committee that makes the decision. The medal is awarded to a book that has a publication date copyright of the previous year. And the judging criteria is basically a summation of the skillfulness and excellence to either an interpretation of a theme or concept, development of plot, setting, presentation of organization, clarity, style, and its characters in like the genre of children's literature.
And it's been around for 100 years now, so I would imagine it's faced some criticism over that time. You came across a couple of stories, huh?
Yeah, definitely. So like one of those critiques is that sometimes people feel like the committee might lean too conservative. Like they might avoid picking a book because it's too popular and modern. One of those books was Captain Underpants. Some people felt like that deserved more like a credit to the contribution to children's literature, but there's often a debate between literary books and popularized books and which ones are more legitimate. Another controversial critique was, like I mentioned earlier, Charlotte's Web didn't win the Newbery Medal Award because of its theme of death. And at that time, people thought that was too inappropriate for children. But it did win an honorary award.
Don't remember Charlotte's Web being wildly inappropriate as a child.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy because I love that book.
Seems like a pretty successful program overall. Their goal was to promote children's literature, and the genre has really exploded over the last 100 years. The question then is, how does a BookBaby book win an award?
So for the Newbery Medal, you can find the submissions guidelines at ala.org. But overall, it depends on what award we're talking about. Importantly, most groups are only interested in books from the previous year.
Right. Authors, they don't want to have old stories there. They want the new stuff.
So, Sam, if someone from BookBaby wanted to get an award pendant on their cover, do you have any idea how they go about that?
I do. We have a process for that. It's called a post-distribution file update. Some of our authors may be familiar with that. That's when they want to change their book files after they've already approved it, after it's been published. We really recommend that only for certain changes. Adding the medal to your cover would certainly be on there. That's one of the reasons why you might want to do a post-distribution file update. And our clients can get that started by emailing support@bookbaby.com. And you can also add that info in your metadata, of course. You can put that right in your description so that anybody just reading about your book is going to know right away your qualifications. So then the big question is how to promote that.
I think a great way to promote that would be to run an ad, definitely letting us know that information so we can let the world know.
Speaking of some of the great books that we have, segue into my interview with Candice Rouser. Last week, I had the pleasure to sit down with Dr. Rouser. She's a professor at the City University of New York. She published a lecture book with us. Jazz, have you ever heard of a lecture book?
No, as someone who loves academia, this is the first time I'm hearing of a lecture book.
So her book lays out the key points that she would cover in lectures and can be used as a supplementary text for her classes. This is her first BookBaby title, and it's titled Engaged Citizen, A Look into Congress. And she told me about how she came to write this book.
It was actually the suggestion of a colleague in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And they asked me, why don't you publish some of your lectures? And I said, oh, people do that? And they said, yeah. So I talked with them again to get more clarity. And then I went and just pulled lectures, from various courses. And, I put them all together and I thought about, how would I package it and introduce it. And then, I wrote the introduction, everything. And then I, got my quote and everything and submitted it on BookBaby.
So this was for high school or college level courses?
College level courses.
Okay. So how did you end up publishing with BookBaby?
They first presented it to me like through Amazon because there's this partnership or whichever, I'm not sure of the official commercial terms or whatever, but there's a collaboration between BookBaby and Amazon. So I had initially searched through Amazon and BookBaby was one of the publishing companies that came up. And so I, clicked on the link and I read through the information and the material that was provided and accessible. And then I decided to work with BookBaby.
Sounds like good work by our SEO marketing team. So I noticed that you have bookshop only for your POD. What made you decide on that distribution option?
Because of the information that BookBaby is, for me, is so wonderful in making sure that their authors know. It's like, oh, hey, if you have the bookshop only, the author keeps more of the money from the sales, et cetera, even though you have the retail partners, but it's more beneficial to the author, for whatever gains they're going to have through the process to work with the bookshop directly or primarily.
And how are you promoting? Like who would you say is your target audience for this? Is it people in your courses?
Everybody. Well, because of my, I've had a social media presence on various platforms, but like the totality is going into 13 years now. And so I kind of got like a little taste of what's happening through various platforms. And I see like such a huge gap in basic civics in the country. So it's pretty much anyone who has basic reading comprehension from your fifth grader to your 85-year-old grandmother, if they just want a refresher, but definitely college students. That's also my other main
Got it. I was curious about the following because Bookshop, I think, as a platform works best with people who already have a legitimate following on social media and can just direct people right there versus Amazon or another Barnes and Noble, where it's more browsing and people are going to maybe come across it. With Bookshop, it's more, I think, best for people who already have that following and know how to get people there.
Yes. So, I've shared the links on my platforms as well as, the link in bio, Linktree. So I relied heavily on that and I just put the link directly. Yes.
So this might sound dumb, but what is Linktree? I keep hearing that more and more. I think some of my listeners might be interested to hear about how do you get Linktree?
It was new to me. I've seen various people. I think it was about a year ago, early 2021, where I realized, oh, what is this thing? I think it's forgive me, I'm trying to think succinctly how to say it, but it's basically like a mini website where you can put all the links to your social media presence, all the stuff you've done, your YouTube, your LinkedIn, your websites. You can put them all, they all converge in this one location. And you can just put that on all of your platforms. You can email it to people. You can text it to people if you want to go old school. And they can access everything you've done in every place you are.
Gotcha. So you link directly from Linktree to Bookshop as well?
Yes.
Is that on there?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm curious. I see you also have TikTok. I'm surprised to learn that there's a big, political book, lecture book presence on TikTok.
Yeah.
So what kind of work are you doing there on TikTok? What sort of videos do you make?
I'm just trying to market the book,
Still learning that one as well.
Yeah, I'm still learning that. And, they just actually gave users the capacity to record 3-minute videos. It was just usually the 15 second, 30 second, 1 minute. And so what I've just, sometimes I'll do a quick video, not often, but, or I'll just go and grab screenshots of, the table of contents, the cover of the book. I also have a podcast. And so I just put those things together and just do a quick video. And then I share the link everywhere.
So half of your book, it starts with laying out the basics of how Congress works, kind of the factual information. The second half kind of dives into what's been going on, what Congress has been doing. And I really appreciate how you laid it out so simply. But what do you think is the biggest misconception out there?
Boy, oh boy, how long do we have? No. Being that we are in what is traditionally called a midterms election year, the biggest thing is the presidency is responsible for much more than it really is, like by the general American public. Some of the responsibilities that are actually attributed to Congress in the Constitution, a lot of Americans think that it is the responsibility of the president, and it's not. And so they get frustrated and they're not fully equipped with just the basic info when they go to the ballot box. And then we have to suffer the consequences of, not necessarily picking the best public managers. And so when things don't go the way that people would desire, like they're just ordinary, everyday material lives don't improve, then they're mad at the president, one way or the other. And they don't realize there's this whole group of like a few hundred people who are the policy makers, and the president is the one who carries out the policy. So I thought it was necessary to break that down, to bring that, to take that section of my branches of American government lecture from my American government and politics course that I taught at the community college level, and just expand it, and then, take a look at what Congress is doing and put it together for people to be able to digest.
I think we're talking to you at the right time then. We have midterms this year, and I think the first primary days are next month. At this moment, though, I know a lot of the work, especially in my home state of Pennsylvania, is being held up by the redistricting process. So can we get into that? What is that? Where does it stand?
I know that we just had the 2020 census, right? So every 10 years, there's just this data collection on who's in the country. And this is fundamental because there is an allocation of resources connected to that, as well as needing to know where the people are so that we can have proper representation. And so the districts are also based on the census and where the people in the country are. And that redistricting is controlled at the state level. I do know that we had a ballot measure here in New York City, New York State, that had to do with how that commission that deals with it at the state level is structured, adding 2 or 3 more people, et cetera. So yes, that's where we are. We have some states that are not necessarily doing the responsible and proper thing regarding the redistricting, but I just see various news reports about one political philosophy gaining more seats or losing more seats in this state versus another state, et cetera.
So that would be gerrymandering you're referring to as the improper things?
The improper, yes. from the former governor in the 19th century, I believe it's Massachusetts governor. Eldridge Gerry, I believe that's what his name was. The last name, Gerry, hence gerrymander. Yeah.
I didn't know that was based on a person's name.
Yes. There was a cartoon drawn at the time. There was a district in Massachusetts that he had a hand in redrawing, and there was an artist who was kind of like making fun of it, but also expressing disgruntlement about it. And the way the drawing looked, it looked like a salamander. And so they recommended that they switch it to gerrymander, and that's how we got the term.
I did not know that. That's a great little nugget. So you mentioned your book, The Permanent Apportionment Act, which sets the size of Congress at 435 members. It's been a while since that passed. That was at the beginning of the 20th century. So what is it about that number? Why did Congress stop growing in size while the nation itself continued to grow?
I honestly don't know. There wasn't, I didn't dive deep into that. I wanted to present that fact for any reader to know the point at which it was set. I am of the opinion, and I can't let's see, I can't think of a way for the most appropriate way to do it, but I'm of the opinion that as the population grow, the number of representatives should grow, just as we have other democracies. Constitutional monarchy / democracy is a little bit weird with the UK, France and Germany. These countries have, in the case of France and the UK, they have approximately, it's more than 65 million people. And Germany has 80 million people, but they have national legislatures, the bicameral, they have 500 and 600 representatives in each one. And I'm like, wait a minute, we got 335 million people. Why are we only fixed at 435 in our House of Representatives? I've seen in various texts authored by political scientists, because I'm officially trained as a historian, but I've taught politics. But there's a range of in the early days of the country, each representative represented 30 to 40,000 residents. Today, it's more than 700,000.
Oh, wow.
And so if we kept that figure, or if we try to reach a medium, there, we should have more representatives in the House,
Sounds like it should be like 2,000 people or so.
Right. Because, when you think about the load and the response, like how can they effectively respond to 750,000 people in their district, in various cases, but yeah.
Yeah. So you write one line that caught my attention in the book, that you wrote that the Speaker of the House's power reached its peak in the earliest 20th century. From my understanding, part of Congress's issue with being able to act easily and efficiently right now is that the power has really been consolidated in the hands of leadership. So I guess my question is, who was Joseph Cannon? What power did he have that Nancy Pelosi lacks now?
Well, he was simultaneously the Speaker of the House and I believe the chair of the steering committee, which is the one that gives the Speaker does give the assignments, but it was combining two roles, which they've now decided to separate. So I believe the Speaker still has a role in the committee assignment, but it's also the primary responsibility of the chair of the steering committee themselves. He was a representative from the 19th into the 20th century. And I guess at the time they just thought he did a bit too much. He did a bit too much. Where in times like we're in now with the pandemic, I think some people probably would want the Speaker to have that same degree of power to be able to correct course right now with especially with the pandemic response, even though we do have a substantial improvement from 2 years ago, but yes.
And not because of specifically who that person is in that role, but just due to the nature of the House, they have to be reelected by a much smaller group every 2 years. So
right.
You would think that would make Congress more responsive.
Right.
So that's a little bit about why the House is broken. But what about the Senate? There's a lot of debate right now about the filibuster. How does that all work?
So the filibuster itself, or the debate regarding the filibuster, or both?
Let's define the filibuster first. So what is that? Why does it exist?
Filibuster is pretty much a mechanism or a practice in the Senate where, for one reason or another, good reason or bad reason, senators can delay the passage of a bill. It is technically talking a bill to death to, delay the process. And so it was actually interesting. We just discussed this, but it was referenced by Senator William McClay from Pennsylvania, I believe, in 1789. He wrote it in his diary, and he said pretty much the practice of the Virginia senators to talk away the time so that we can't get the bill passed. And then there's various changes throughout, the course of the history of the country, where by the early 20th century, they developed this other mechanism to end the debate, which is the cloture. And they've made revisions to that whole process as well. The most recent debate is revising the cloture again from a threshold of, it went from 67 senators in the early 20th century to 60 senators to end debate and, move forward.
Shouldn't it be 51 since that's half?
Well, so now in the 2010s, under the Senate majority leadership of the late Senator Harry Reid, the cloture the threshold for votes was changed from 60 to 51, a simple majority for nominations. It is still 60 for legislation. So right now, the issue and the discussion and the debate is surrounding whether we're going to change the threshold to just a simple majority vote for legislation as well.
I was always taught majority rules, and that's how it works.
Yeah,
and you just kind of assume that.
I don't know.
So I'm curious on how does all of this relate back to the lives of our authors? What laws maybe could you see Congress passing that would help shape the publishing industry?
I mean, we already have to go through pretty much Congress for our copyright and patents and trademarks, right? That's in the Constitution. Most likely, the most visible way I can see it is just support the protection of independent authors and their intellectual property, if you want to describe it as such. There are some things that Congress is doing currently, like I did find some information, Library of Congress collections policy statements, independently published and self-published textual materials. And so there's some information where Congress has already moved towards supporting independent publishing, which was something done in the 19th century. But now that we have more of a regular everyday usage of the internet and various platforms, which is democratized expression pretty much of all sorts, even bad, there is more of a move for Congress to protect those authors. I see something in reference to like a control number or something like that authors can register and apply for, et cetera.
So I think on that topic of content kind of neutrality, it's really interesting how, that's, in the First Amendment of the Constitution lays out that, exactly the freedom of expression and what Congress cannot do. But then, within a few years, they passed the Alien and Sedition Acts and say, well, actually, no, you can't write, print, publish. Have the notes here. Any false, scandalous, or malicious writing against the government. So I just thought that was really interesting that, they laid out the specific amendment and then immediately said, but some things.
I guess they saw the need to establish parameters, because if you don't, on either side, either extreme, people will go there. So, there needs to be some type of reasonable limitation, right? You have freedom of speech, but it can't harm. That
right.
Speech cannot harm. Yeah.
Pretty sure that's where the phrase, you can't shout fire in a crowded theater originated.
Yes, it cannot harm. So, I mean, even to this day in the 21st century, there are ordinary, everyday Americans who don't understand that. Like, oh, it's freedom of speech, freedom of speech. No, but that freedom of speech has a limitation where it can pose a threat or harm to the safety and lives of others.
I guess that's why you're trying to engage them further.
Yeah. Yes.
So again, the book is titled Engaged Citizen. What would you say to someone who reads your book and wants to get engaged and start being involved?
I mean, they can wow.
Start with register to vote.
Right, register to vote. Yeah, register to vote. If it's about a cost thing, hey, take a look at your local public library, do a search of their database, go grab and borrow a book. If if there's something you come across, you go look it up and you want to dive deeper, go grab that book, get online, search for any local civic organizations in your area, go to your board of elections if you have any kind of questions, see if you can join any politically focused groups on social media. That's what I can think of right now at the moment.
Specifically, we're here in Black History Month, and as a professor of African American history, what would you like to see as legislative priorities for this Congress?
I mean, I think that we're kind of, I don't know if I want to say the first phase of this executive administration with trying to deal with the pandemic. I think we're doing as well as we can given. But the next critical thing would be voting rights, making sure we're updating, I believe it's the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, as well as HR 1 and HR 4, having to do the For the People Act and voting rights. They've renamed some of these bills, honestly. I've taken a look for the updates. Just making sure that the very foundation of a democratic society is secured. And unfortunately, according to the record of this country, one of the critical parts of this population that's been targeted with that right to vote, that right to choose who governs you, who makes decisions regarding your life, is constantly interfered with. And that is the African American community within the overall American family. So that's the thing I want to see done for now. And I know we also have a Supreme Court vacancy coming up with the retirement of Justice Breyer, I believe it is. And President Biden had already made a commitment to fill that seat with particularly an African American woman jurist, legal professional. So I'd like to see that happen as well.
First in Supreme Court history, I believe?
Yes. I mean, if I had it, there are people talking about it, and I have to take a deeper dive into that. Because when you do American government and politics, this is like, a survey. There are courses that center on the three branches alone. So, clearly there's a deeper dive into the three branches of government. I believe that the court at this time in our history and given all the things that have happened, especially in the last 5 to 6 years, the court should be expanded. When it first started, it included 6 justices, one chief and 5 associates. I think that the court should reflect what this country is. I want to see someone on that court in all the facets and varieties that is America.
So the court's going to be your second book?
No. No, you know what? I'll leave that to the official legal people. I think that I want to focus on Congress because, we have plenty of people that are writing about the presidency. I just ordered a book on Bill Clinton's presidency because I became more curious. I was a kid at the time, and now that I'm older and I have like a better grasp, I want to take a closer look at his presidency to get a better understanding of the various dynamics at play. And so there are plenty of people writing on the presidency, and I'll just leave it to the jurists to write on the court because they have a perspective that I'm not sure that I can provide like that. I know my lane.
And that was Dr. Candice Rowser, professor and BookBaby author. Jasmine, before we head out of here, what are you reading?
Right now, it is All About Love by the famous Bell Hooks, who actually passed away recently, but an amazing, phenomenal writer.
Perfect for Valentine's Day, too. Yeah, I'm reading one of our colleagues' books, but I just noticed actually that she only has her initials on it, so I should probably keep that to myself.
Gotta respect the pseudonym.
Yeah, good point. All right, well, shout out then instead to Ronnie Williams. His BookBaby titled Markham Street, he was able to get that in Walmart. They placed a bulk order and it's going to be carried in some of their stores, which is really awesome, exciting. His book's about his brother's murder, so pretty intense.
Sounds like a podcast in the works.
We'll see. Before we go, huge thank you to our guest today, Candice Rouser. You can find more information about her at Linktree, that is linktr.ee/Dr. Rouser. Her book, Engaged Citizen, is available on the BookBaby Bookshop now, along with thousands of others independently published books. That's store.bookbaby.com. If If you're interested in publishing with BookBaby, our reps want to hear from you. 877-961-6878 or info@bookbaby.com. Until next time, this has been the BookBaby Spotlight.